I'm originally Canadian, although my family's been based in Southampton for as long as I can remember, or even longer. I've been in the country for a couple of years now, and working at the football club for those 2 years. And I thoroughly enjoy my job. My basic job is the manager of the supporters club here, which entails anything from entertaining guests on a match day to the business during the week and functions as well. We have over 500 members, which obviously do shift and change as each season ends. We do get a few dropouts, but there's a waiting list of about 200 people in addition to that. On a match day, though, we average about 300 to 350 supporters every match day. Mainly, we do get a lot of players who come in to guest speak. The likes of Francis Benali, very popular, and is in here quite regularly. But we do get quite a lot of ex-Saints. Matt Letizia is, of course, still prevalent in here, and still one of the fan favourites. Other than that, David Prutton is obviously, due to recent events, not as popular, but by far one of the better younger players in the team. I mean, Mr. Ball, I believe, has been in here on occasion. That's for sure.
Okay.
He's an absolute cult hero as well, of course, for obvious reasons. Yeah. Through the years, I mean, for myself, I've only been here 2 years. Unfortunately, I started just after the FA Cup run. That would be my most memorable moment, but I wasn't working here at that very moment in time. I was sat in a bar in Spain watching with pride, one of the only ones in the room with a Southampton shirt on. The rest were all, of course, wearing the Gooner shirts. But that was probably my most memorable moment of recent years. But since being here, our cup run this year was quite exciting. Of course, playing Portsmouth last year, the first game was memorable, to say the least. There is only one Matt Letizia, and I'm afraid he's a god in my mind, and I know obviously the nickname reflects that as well, but he's by far my favourite player, by far. The spirit of Southampton. It's very strange, it's very unique. I've been to other grounds and talked to a lot of other supporters, and they don't have that same spirit, and to define it, I would say it's almost family-like, especially in this supporters club. Everyone knows each other. It's a camaraderie between everybody. Of course, there are the negative views after each game, but I like to think in here we really have the heart of the club that support the club in this establishment. Mr. Lowe, brilliant man. Probably one of the best football businessmen I think there are. The whole reason we have this fabulous stadium is down to him. No one else. I think he deserves a lot of the praise. But I can't fault him. You know, I really can't. He's always a smiley face around the stadium. He never has a bad word to say.
Do you see him often?
We see him probably weekly at least, if not once, maybe even more times, depending on what's going on in the stadium, board meetings and the likes of that. Which of course is very prevalent at. Lifelong servants. You can't get better ambassador for the club really than the two of those gentlemen. It's quite sad. It was quite sad to see Mr. Letizia hang up his boots, but the service he gave was second to none. And I can honestly say the same about Mr. Benali really. More than just the club, it's the city. The city loved them. You know, I only have a few members of my family that aren't supporters, but even they just look up to these two gentlemen because they were all the ultimate professionals, not prima donnas. They didn't think they were more special than they were. They're here to play football, and they did it very well. And they were great service. Absolutely. Matt Oakley, obviously, is a little bit younger than the other three, but Jason Dodd, I'd say, would be a very close third. The three of them together are the trio of the red and white, really. Definitely.
Been here 11 years. I'm in my 12th year now. Came back in November '94. And Alan Ball was the manager. Southampton was the local club to me, and happened to have a job going at the right time, and yeah, I just went for it, just applied for it, and was lucky enough to be working and got a job.
How do you keep the pitch in such great condition when there are so many games played these days?
That's hard work. That really is hard work. It's a real science. People wouldn't understand this, but the pitch is actually made out of virtually pure sand. It's sort of 95% sand, a little bit of silt, a little bit of clay. So what you're actually growing in is something that's very free draining, but it won't hold very much nutrients. So you've got to do regular soil analysis, leaf tissue analysis, and you've got to keep on it. And if there's anything that's deficient, you've got to apply just the right amount just to keep it in balance. and that's difficult trying to fit in a programme of putting the stuff down on the pitch and along with the team training or playing on there. Yes and no. I was upset. There was a lot of history. Been there for 6 years before we moved here. So yeah, there was a lot of time, effort, but you know, it was challenged. The new pitch was being built, the new pitch was being constructed as we left the old one. So it was sort of exciting. Yeah, sad to see the old place go and fall under the bulldozers, but exciting to move to a new place and new challenges.
Were you there at the last game?
Yeah, we were there. Been there for every match. There's not many games I've missed in the last 12 years.
So do you remember at the end of the game seeing the fans going on the pitch and
oh yeah,
tearing bits up?
I had a lot of fans came running up to me at the end of the pit. They had it seemed that you couldn't leave the ground unless you had a broken seat and then a bit of turf set on your broken seat. And I went out onto the pitch with a lot of the fans there and they're shaking my hands going, oh, this is brilliant. And I was saying to them, remember to look after it because the pitch hasn't grown yet in a new stadium. We might need it back to start the season. Yeah, it's a big thing of our job. It's the motivation. It's pride. You want a team to win on it. Obviously, that's the first and foremost, and you have to have a condition for the team to play their football in. So that's the main thing. But obviously, from our point of view, it's a pride thing. That's why you see all these weird and wonderful patterns on there because we take pride in the pitch and we want it to look as good as we possibly can for the fans and for the people on the telly. It's a showpiece. It shows everybody they have the work that we do over here. Yeah, there's a team of 3 of us that look after the stadium most of the time. It's myself, Andy, and Ricky. But we're quite flexible at the moment. Ricky's over the training ground and helping out. We've got another team of 3 people at the training ground, which is a lot bigger site, obviously. And that's, to be fair, they're the unsung heroes. They're the ones that really do all the hard work. This is the glory job here. This is a bit that everybody sees on telly. This is where the players earn their money, so to speak. But the training ground has to be in a good condition every day of the week.
Is it true that there are reports of shirts under the pitch from where people broke in before the stadium was opened in the first place?
Well, there's a rumour that there's one underneath there, but I'm sure with that amount of, no, I won't say it, but I'm sure with that amount of rubbish that's been put underneath the pitch, we'd see it nice and green underneath it if there was a Portsmouth shirt underneath there. But no, it's not true at all. No, it's a good rumour though.
Have you ever had a last-minute problem with the pitch just before a game?
Nothing comes to mind. I'm always nervous. It has to be right, and there's no excuses. It's throwing it down with rain, whether it's snowing or whatever. The pitch has to be right and playable. Especially with TV, you can't sort of say, "Oh, well, can we wait another 10 minutes to get the pitch ready?" So you're always a little bit nervous at that. Normally, if it's a like a Saturday and 3 o'clock kickoff, not we've had many of those in the last season. We generally one of us will come in early and get the mower out, and we'll cut the pitch first thing in the morning. Then the other one of us will come in a little bit later than that, and then we'll put the white lines down. And then it's just a matter of making sure that goals are in, corner flags are in, just making sure that everything is the best it possibly can do. Just before a match, the players come out and do a warm-up, and we'll walk the pitch afterwards just to make sure that it's totally flat for kick-off. If they want it watered, we might put a splash of water on there, which just zips the surface up, makes it faster passing. Then during the game, half-time we're on the pitch, making sure that it's as flat as it possibly can be to stop the incidents, like you said about Blackburn, trying to stop that from happening. Then I have a crew of lads after the game. We'll walk the pitch and make sure all the divots are put back straight after the match.
What's been your best moment during your time at the club?
Don't know, we've had a lot of them. There's some memorable games, certainly at the old ground. The Man United matches at the old ground, beating them 6-3, 4-1, 1-0. I think it was probably the worst game to football for me to ever watch was when Kevin Davis scored 3 minutes in, and we were hanging on for 90 minutes effectively of relentless Man United pressure, but we still held on, defended well, but your sort of heart was in your mouth for that one. Remember us, one of the memorable games would have been Newcastle back at the Dell. I think we'd beaten 4-1 in the end, and we were 1-0 down until 5 minutes, and I remember seeing the ground empty and everybody was leaving. Then we scored 4 goals in the last 5 minutes. One hit Tommy Woodrington's chin and went in, but that was an amazing comeback. Seeing some of Matty's free kicks, fantastic. And here, probably from my point of view of a new stadium, most memorable game for me would probably be the England match when we had England-Macedonia down here, just because I prepared the pitch, my staff prepared the pitch for our country. I don't know, I suppose it's got to be Matty really. I'm sure everybody says the same thing, but he's just the one man that turns the magic on, you know. And he was just one of those people. The ball went down for a penalty, you knew Matty was going to score. Went for a free kick, you're pretty well sure that Matty was going to score. So I'd say Matty. But some of the players we've got in the moment, Henri Camara's fantastic. Can he move with the ball at his feet? Fabrice Fernandez, another one, great footballer. And Ronnie Eklund, briefly saw him just before I first started, again, a great player. So we've had a few. I don't know, it's a tricky one really. I think the fans. I think it's the fans that make Southampton. When I've been to away games, I think we've probably got certainly one of the best travelling fans, nicest travelling fans, vocal travelling fans. There's never any real trouble or nastiness. We always give plenty of vocal support to the team, and even at the home games, it's nice to see that when the fans get behind. Everybody was worried when we moved to the new ground that the atmosphere wouldn't be here, but I think the atmosphere has been better. It's when you're on the pitch, if we're on the pitch just as a team run out, it's still, with the 12 years I've been here, it still puts the hairs up on the back of my neck. The sound comes off the roof and is directed onto the pitch, and it's electrifying. And you know, I think that's part of it. That's all part of the spirit of Southampton.
When I'm feeling dejected, my thoughts all reflected, I find my mind go back to all the good times we had. While others start bitching, I look to the itching. I know this place I come from is like heaven above. Heaven above. And you're damaged and torn by a season forlorn. The whistle blows, the groundsman mows, and chants fill the air. Success is a figment of a sick bluish pigment, but rivalry's healthy, cats will beat you next year. Beat you next year. And St. Mary's comes to life.
Now it was time to speak to legends, and all of them ex-Saints. Ronnie Eklund phoned and invited us to join him in Spain and to take part in our documentary. And Nicky Banger was also pleased to remember some great times and escapes of the 1990s. We really had a great time with somebody who loves Southampton as much as us fans do. Laurie McMenemy himself rang to accept our request. We were also lucky enough to share some great memories with Peter Osgood, Nick Holmes, Alan Ball and John Sydenham during the magical night of the Ted Bates fundraising dinner at the St Mary's Stadium. If we thought that Franny Benali & Co had already told us all there was to know of the family spirit of Southampton Football Club, then we were about to find out that there was just as much to be learned from past players and managers as with the present.
I think as a football player you miss the excitement before the game starts, the butterflies. You miss going out there and being competitive. I'll get frustrated when I see players and think I could do a better job than them. I get frustrated that my body won't let me do what my brain wants me to do because of injuries, and obviously as you get over 30, when you get injured it takes you a lot longer to recover. But the actual playing football competitively I miss.
Who have you most enjoyed playing with as a player?
Matt Lettiz, Alan Shearer, Rodney Wallace I enjoyed playing with. I enjoyed playing in Scotland because it's a completely different game. I think most of the players that I've played with, there's a great team spirit whenever you play, and all the lads, no matter how much money they're on, they are very, very passionate about their football and their training. I'm lucky that I've played with a few people that have been fantastic footballers for England, so that's very privileged for me.
There's a lot of loyalty in Southampton.
Yes.
How would you describe the work done by Matt Lettiz, Benali and Jason Dodd?
Yeah, I mean, the great thing about those three players in particular is they're very, very loyal to Southampton. There's a lot of people now that go from club to club, financial reasons or whatever, but those lads have actually stayed loyal to Southampton, which is quite rare in today's game, and they actually played at the highest standard for a long time. You know, and I don't think you see that. You don't see that very often now, but you know, that those three are ambassadors of the club and what everything Southampton Football emulates in loyalty and team spirit. That they basically cover all of those. Ronnie was very, very quiet player. I met him in Barcelona actually when we had a pre-season tour over there, and he was a very, very quiet person. He has a beautiful wife, and it's a shame he was married. But yeah, beautiful wife, and but Ronnie was a very, very intelligent player. He could find space, he had a fantastic touch of the ball, he had a lot of awareness around him, and I think unfortunately because of his injury, it's unfortunately that he didn't stay at Southampton and actually reach his full potential because he was an outstanding prospect.
Southampton FC fans are thinking of building a statue in honour of Ted Bates.
Yes.
What are your opinions on this?
I think it'd be wonderful because of he really, without someone like Ted Bates, all the things that probably Rupert Lowe's done now would never have started if Ted Bates wasn't there at the start, and I'd be very, very happy to support that. I think the spirit's very, very. It has always been there. The fans are very, very passionate fans, and they like to see good football played. I think they've been spoilt in the last recent years with us getting to the FA Cup with Gordon Strachan, and their expectations have definitely gone up. And I think sometimes their expectations are a little bit exaggerated at times because of there seems to be a gap now with the big boys like Man United, Chelsea, Arsenal. But I think the actual team spirit, I think Southampton generally like to watch good football, and and that's their main expectation.
It's my second home. I have said this before, but I'll gladly repeat it again. I had a fantastic time. The fans was very, very nice to me, and I really appreciate it. Southampton is like a second home to me.
You scored probably the best goal of the season there.
When I finish my career, I might go into coaching. I have thought about it, but we'll see. Hopefully it's some years away, but Southampton is in my mind. You never know what's going to happen, but who knows, after my career I might want to settle down there as well.
This for the Saints.
Oh yeah,
I'm
a big Saints obviously, and as I said, yeah, I've only good things to say about Southampton.
Do you follow the Saints?
I do, yeah, whenever I can. Whenever they send the games on TV in America, I'll watch it.
The website? Official website?
Yes, I obviously see the results all the time, but to watch the games, I have to go on obviously TV. So whenever it's on. Well, I am very happy to have been a part of the Saints history, and I'm hopefully one day I can come back and maybe do something for the Saints. You never know what's going to happen in this business, but I appreciate all the kind words I have gotten on the way. Thank you very much.
Well, it was a present to me. We were in Holland on a pre-season tour. A real good friend in Johan Cruyff. Had known for a long time. And Barcelona was staying at the same hotel as us. We were having dinner after we'd played, and he walked into our restaurant. Of course, my players were absolutely gobsmacked. They couldn't believe that this guy had walked in looking for me. He sat down with Dave Merrington, Lou Chatterley and I, and we had a great chinwag for about an hour. And then he said to me, "You looking for any players?" I said, "I need a good midfield player." He said, "I'll leave you a present tomorrow." And it was Ronnie Eklund. Wow. He cost no money, there was no transfer. It was just a present from Johan to me. And he was on the same wavelength as me.
I never had any intention to get into management, to be fair. When I finished playing, all I wanted to do was stay in and probably do some coaching with the younger ones. Unfortunately, that never happened, and by chance, sort of probably 15 years after I'd finished playing, I got a phone call when I was going to work in Florida, and someone asked me to come back and manage a football club here. It's a smashing little club. I mean, it's close to Southampton. Southampton is still my first love, and Salisbury my second love. I'm unlikely to ever manage Southampton, so Salisbury's hopefully. I mean, it's always been tough bringing in local talent or whatever, or even people coming through. When I was finishing at the Dell, it was really the last big bunch coming through, which was the Shearers, the Rodney Wallaces, the Matt Letiziers, the Neil Madisons, and that's the last real group. I think Francis Benali was probably more or less around that time. That's the largest group of youngsters that have come through and developed. And over the recent years, it becomes tougher because of the intake of foreign players now. I mean, they buy well-known players. A lot of these younger players that are being nurtured along end up in the lower league. Matt certainly not. Matt will just become a senior on the golf tour, and Francis possibly, because Francis. I've tried to get him to come and play for us up here, and I mean, I think he was tempted to a certain degree, but at the end of the day, his other business interests took him. But I think Francis will find over the next 3 or 4 years or whatever that he would like in some way to be involved in football, because it was his life for 20 years.
Yeah. And what's your feelings on Alan Ball, and can you just sort of describe the role that Alan played at the club?
Alan was the most infectious footballer that I've ever played with. I mean, he was just superb to play alongside. I mean, he just insisted the best out of you. He insisted skill, he insisted effort, and it was just a joy to play with Alan, and also with Stevie Williams as a midfield three that we did in the late 70s. It was I felt that was probably some of the best times that we had, and as a midfield three we sort of had a good contrast with each other, that you had a bit of everything. Wonderful. Ted, I mean, you didn't realise how good Ted was until you got older, because Ted was a little bit different, but Ted's whole outlook was football. I mean, that was all he could talk was football, it seemed, and such a knowledgeable man. And it wasn't until you got into the first team and listened to him, you realise what a great man he was. It was without a doubt. I mean, the modern ways, it will never be the same. But I mean, it was simple. It was the thing that you said, that when you were a kid, you went to the chocolate boxes. I was the same, or whatever. It was such a close proximity, the whole ground, wasn't it? You still fit 30,000 in there, but it was right on top of you. And I just felt, everyone was there to enjoy football. The one thing during the 60s, 70s and 80s, the entertainment was fantastic. I mean, the number of games you saw that were 3-2, 4-2. I remember beating Wolves 9-3 in the 60s. We beat Coventry 8-2, and it was just, I think the ground had a lot to do with the spirit that was around.
Who out of our youth players you thought would make the grade for us?
No,
we've got some quite good names like Theo Walcott and Dexter Blackstock.
Blackstock come into the side, darling.
Yeah, he did.
I just think it's very hard for him to come into a side that's struggling, and we are struggling at the moment.
That's right.
And when I was very fortunate when I went into Chelsea Football Club. I was playing with Terry Venables, George Graham, Barry Bridges, the Harris brothers. I mean, I went into a very, very good side, and that helps you. So I think it's very hard for him, the young lad, to come into a side that is struggling. I think he's a very, very good talent. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah, I agree with that.
I mean, Shannon. When you look at Shannon and people like Shannon, myself, like Shearer, they came into good sides. Shearer was down here, wasn't he? Let's be fair, and he came into a good side. But unfortunately, this young lad's come into a side that's struggling. If he had come into a good side, then I think he'd have shone very big time. I just think that we went there to have a bit of fun. We had experienced players, we had young players as well. We had people like David Peach, we had Paul Gilchrist, Nick Holmes, and we had experienced players, and our captain was fantastic, Peter Rodrigues. We had Mick Shannon, myself, Jim McCalliog, Mel Blythe, Jimmy Steele. We had
Stokes.
but Bobby was probably and Bobby scored the goal. But at the end of the day, we went there to enjoy ourselves, and it worked for us. It really did, and we were the better side on the day, to be honest.
Legends, who, in your opinion, would be a legend?
Ted Bates is obviously the biggest name you'd ever go for. I had great affinity with Laurie McMenemy because he signed me here. But there's only one real legend for me, is Michael Shannon. Everybody says Terry Payne. All right, Terry Payne was a good player, played many times, 700 games for Southampton. But Mickey Shannon was different class. Shannon was Southampton through and through, and he lived in the vicinity. He was born down this way, and he's just a fantastic player, and he's a great friend of mine.
You still keep in contact?
Oh, I still keep in contact with Mickey, and he's crap at tipping horses, mind the way. So don't ask him about that. But no, Mickey would be the best, and then I honestly put Mickey Shannon top of the list. Then I would say Matt Letizia. I thought Matty was fantastic. I thought Matty was a superb player. Scored lots of goals for Southampton, and then Terry Payne. I think that'd be my three.
But we are.
But it's all done opinions, darling. But at the end of the day, I played with Mickey. I never played with Matty. But Matty was superb. He scored more goals than Mickey. and he stayed here for many years more. But at the end of the day, I just think Mickey was superb.
Football, going back to when you were a player and now, what do you think's been the most obvious changes?
Cheating from foreign players. From foreign players, yes. I do. I think the foreign players have brought some bad things into our game. I think they've brought a lot of good things into our game. I think the discipline off the pitch has been fantastic. I think their ability is fantastic, but their cheating on the game, in the game, diving, has been outrageous. I just can't stand that. I just can't. If I watch myself, if I played on a Saturday and watched football on a Sunday on the TV and watched myself diving and falling around, I'd feel disgusted with myself. I'd feel, that I wasn't doing the right things, and I think that's the main thing.
And what do you think of our manager now, Harry Redknapp, and his son?
I've been a friend for Harry. I played against Harry at 17 years of age.
You played against him?
Yes, I was Chelsea youth team. I played against Harry at West Ham in the Junior Floodlit Cup. We beat 3-1. I scored 2 goals, and he's just a lovely fella. He lives for football, and I think we've done the chairman's done a fantastic job. I thought Glenn Hoddle was going to come here, to be honest, but I'm glad that Harry's come here, because I think Harry is so dedicated to football. He loves football. He lives just down the road. He's got his son in here, and his son is playing absolutely. He's transformed the place. The 2 Redknapps have transformed the place in the last couple of weeks, and it's a pleasure to be part of. It really is.
You could see that on Saturday. I think.
What a lovely shot when he walked off the pitch,
and he hugged his dad.
And he cuddled his dad, didn't he?
Yeah.
And I think it's lovely, And I think
that's the family spirit coming back into the club.
That's for you, Dad. I think that's lovely. Yeah.
Have you never considered management or training?
I was youth team coach at Portsmouth, to be honest.
Oh, right.
I know, terrible thing to say.
Didn't know that.
Under Alan Ball and Graham Padden.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I enjoyed it very much. So I haven't got the affinity. Doesn't worry me, to be honest. I mean, Chelsea my first club, Southampton a second. Everybody knows that. And then Portsmouth. I haven't got a problem with Portsmouth.
No.
I haven't got a Portsmouth.
So whose side are you going to be on Saturday?
You're joking. It's only one top for me. I love Southampton. I love working here.
Can you remember that?
Unbelievable. I tell you what. I walked in. My first week at Southampton, I walked into the Dell, and all of a sudden I thought, what's that horrible smell? And Shannon and Brian O'Neill had been mucking the horses out, and they're Wellington. They came in. They didn't have time to change, so they come in and they're Wellingtons, and the horse muck on their bloody feet. Oh, terrible! It stunk. It really did. But they are. But that was Southampton. That was the way it was in them days. I mean, when I went my first game away from home, I said to Mick, "Where's your overnight bag?" He said, "I've got a toothbrush, Ozzy." That's all he had was a toothbrush.
Really?
And that was Shannon. Yeah. And I was collar and tie, suited and booted, as I brought up at Chelsea. And but Laurie soon turned it round. Laurie turned it round. Laurie Mack. And it was a pleasure to play under a man. He is Mr. Southampton for me. Because I mean, Ted Bates did a fantastic job. But Laurie enhanced it, and Laurie was the man that kept it going.
The spirit of Southampton. Well, it's probably different things to different people, but to me, I've been involved with the club since I was 8 years of age, really, the way through. So it's my hometown. It's somewhere very, very special. I can remember the first day that I put on the red and white stripes, and that was a very, very special feeling. And we say that our blood runs red and white, which it probably does. It's just been our whole life, this club, and hopefully we can stay at the top level for a little bit longer. Laurie McNamee. I didn't play under Laurie, but I think Laurie did a fantastic job for Southampton Football Club. Obviously he took us to the cup final, but another thing he did, he signed a lot of very exciting players, a lot of players that maybe were at the end of their careers but still had enough to do a good job and keep us up in the Premier League and keep the game exciting for the fans. Okay. And that's what we need now. Ted Bates, well, Ted Bates was my manager for the whole of my career. Totally different personality to Laurie, but knew the game inside out. I don't think there's ever been a manager that would totally live for the game, which Ted did. And he had great insight into the game. He knew players. He gave youth a chance right from the start, which is why we did okay. And he could always see a player. Ted could recognise a player, and he handled things very well. And I think Ted was a manager that all of us wanted to play for, and I think that's what makes a good manager.
Do you remember the day when he signed you?
Yeah, very, very well. Yes, very well. I can remember, the £10 signing on fee cheque very, very well, which it was in 1956, and riding my bike back home and with the cheque in my pocket. A lot different to today, but yeah, so Ted really was the one that gave me my start. He, with myself and Terry Payne as well, we signed around the same time, and we played all our careers, most of our careers, with the same club. Okay. And I think mainly because we respected Ted and we wanted to play for him.
Ronnie Benali and Matt Letizia. What do you think?
Well, you're talking about legends now that I think you'll probably never see the like again. I think they are two players you mentioned have both been magnificent servants to Southampton. They've played their whole careers with the club. They never really wanted to go anywhere else, and I think that they may be a dying breed. You may not be seeing that in the future if the game continues the way it is. The best player I ever played with at Southampton was a guy called Jimmy Gabriel, who was, and the reason I say Jimmy Gabriel was because he was a player that you could play anywhere. If you were struggling at the back, you could put him back there. He's midfield. You could stick him up front and he'd score goals, and he was just a magnificent all-round player. And a lot of people, you don't hear a lot about Jimmy Gabriel, but in my opinion, during my time, he was the greatest all-round player at Southampton.
At the football club, great times. You came 73. You were just saying, I can remember it well, the cup final in 76. What's your fondest memory of those days? If there's something that sticks out a mile, or apart from the cup win, obviously, and the great times?
Well, there's a stack of good memories. I mean, little thing today, talking with the three lads spread across. Like Nick Holmes was a young boy at the club when I joined in 1973. Matty was a youngster I signed later on as a schoolboy, and Alan Ball was a senior international professional who I brought in from outside. And that covers the whole spectrum, really, because in my time there, people remember all the big names that came. Somebody said to me the other week, "Oh, weren't they good?" And then you went right through them all, from Shilton to Rodriguez to, well, all of them, Mel Blythe and David Peach, McCalliog, Ball, Keegan, Shannon, all them. And I said, well, yeah, terrific. Osgood, Charlie George, Frank Worthington, and on and on and on. And I said, they're fantastic, but they weren't all there together. No. If they'd all been there together, you wouldn't have had a ground big enough. No. And the football would have been terrific, one touch, half a touch. You would have played the best football going, would have had the best social life, that's for sure. And we'd have got relegated because we wouldn't have won an away game. Nobody would have got the ball. Ideal teams are made up of road sweepers and violinists, and they were all lead violinists. Now, if you get too many of them together, you've got to have a blend. You've got to have a balance, and that was, to me, the fascination of management, was getting the blend. Now, I could bring in those lead violinists. We didn't have any money. I'd like to think what we would have done with the income that they have now. Yeah. I mean, you know what the Dell was like, and we went, when I first came, it held about 32,000, and it gradually went down to exactly half, 15 250 or something. And we didn't have any shops but a corner shop, and we didn't have a social club at the beginning, so we had nothing to talk about coming in, no boxes or anything like that. So we had to cut the cloth, and I could get these good players at the end of their career. But I would blend them with the youth policy that we had, which was terrific. When I first came, Ted, bless him, said, "Oh, we get the best boys in Hampshire." And I said, "Well, so we should, because we're the best club in Hampshire." But we didn't really spread the net out much wider. And he used to get the odd Scots lad, because one of his old goalkeepers, I can't remember his name now, did a bit of scouting. Campbell Forsyth. But you see, the rules were you couldn't sign a Scots lad till he left school. Whereas an English lad, you could sign him at 14 on schoolboy forms. Now it's completely different. They've got academies now, and you can bring a lad into your club at 8 or 9 year old. But in those days it wasn't. But so it wasn't much good having Scottish schoolboys coming down if they couldn't sign for you. But we spread the net, and I appointed people that I knew, like in the Northeast, Jack Hickson and his pals, who produced us in the long run. People like Alan Shearer. I mean,
I was going to say, you spotted Shearer line.
Doesn't matter about anybody else, but it happened that the first couple were Tony Seeley and George Shipley.
I used to look after them,
Well, you know, and a lot of people hopefully will remember them, and they were good lads.
I do,
Terrific lads. And that was the start, and then I appointed another fella in the Midlands area, and I used to give work to old managers who were out of work. And there was one occasion, we were playing at Man United, and we were in a nice hotel in Manchester, and I'd invited a few of these along to join in the lunch on the Saturday, because you see, when you're not in the game and you've been in it, you miss it. Saturday, I mean, I don't miss Monday to Friday as much, but Saturday it's a killer, and I knew that, and so inviting these managers along on the Saturday to be part of it again and rub shoulders and get the feel of it was fantastic for them. And they were all standing there before the lunch and waiting for the players to come down, and there was Harry Catrick, who used to be at Everton, and Jimmy Andrews and Jack Marshall, and there was about 5 managers, and Mr. Woodford, who was the chairman then, he came down, he saw me with them, and he recognised all these fellas, and he wanted to meet them, and I introduced them, and he said, came up with a classic line, he said, "What are you doing now?" And Harry Catrick says, "Well, we're all working for you." But he didn't know, like, I hadn't bothered, you know, because they used to let me get on and manage, and they were only getting expenses. But I had this network of people around, and once a year, I invited them all down to the Dell and for a weekend, the scouts. And they would come on a Friday night, and I'd put them in the Polygon or the Royal, as it was then. And then we'd bring them to the Dell on the Friday night, and the directors would come and we'd have a drink this evening. And on the Saturday morning, we'd put a junior game on, and they would watch there. And then there'd be guests at the first team game in the afternoon. And on the Sunday, we'd have trials, and all these kids would be there. So they had a wonderful weekend. And Jack Hickson, a wonderful fella, still very old, but he's Shearer's man, and he still lives on that. And he's up in Newcastle still, very old, quite ill really, but he was a great man for weekends like that. He used to be the leader, and he'd arrange there's always plenty of laughter in the weekend. And we had this network of people, and produced in the long run what Bawley called me conveyor belt. And if you were looking after players in those days, that's what the other thing we did. We handpicked good houses and good people. And I used people like John Mortimer to do that. He was like chief scout, and he would go around and make sure that these lads are bedded in. Because the worst thing, you see, that happens at some football clubs, they used to come and just be put into a place, and nobody bothered what it was like, and they went to see them, and as long as they turned up for training. But we handpicked all that, and they came into the club and were able to rub shoulders with these big names and big stars. And eventually, if they got in the team, very early some of them got in, teenagers, they gave the legs to the older players, and the older players gave them their brains and their experience. And I was able, my fascination was mixing and matching, and the hard thing was telling like a senior player it was time to move on, and me to bring the next one in.
That's one of the questions.
And that's delicate, very delicate
Talking
area.
about big name players, it was a coup getting Keegan and other players. Who, in your opinion, was your best buy for the club?
Well, it's difficult. I mean, pound for pound, none of them cost a lot of money. Kevin was an extraordinary signing because nobody in the country expected
No,
it. Knew
I
about
remember
it.
that day. It was
unbelievable.
yeah.
I can remember coming home from school that day. Like, I was still at school, and I walked in the back door, and my dad said, my dad was a season ticket holder, and I used to go with him, and he said, Laurie signed Kevin Keegan. And I just laughed. I laughed at him. I said, "Yeah, having a laugh, you know." He said, "No, seriously." And I went on to the teletext, and it's sure enough, Laurie signs or Saint signed Keegan, and I still couldn't believe it. How did you keep it so quiet for? It was at the.
Well, I mean, I never. If you remember, I never ever divulged anybody I was going to sign.
The deals were kept much quieter in those days.
I would still do it if I could.
Yeah, yeah.
The difference nowadays, the players' agents probably let it out, and they've all got agents. But Kevin had an agent.
Yeah.
Kevin had an agent called Harry Swales, who all these years later, Harry is still an agent for. I saw his name linked the other day. He's Ryan Giggs' agent.
Oh, really? Right.
And but Kevin was very much his own man, and I said to Kevin after I'd done it, "What about Harry Swales?" And he said, "Well, if you want to tell him, you can." He hadn't even told Harry.
Really?
Kevin did his own bit, and it was just him and me. And I said, "Well, I think Harry should be there." I knew Harry Swales anyway, and I rang Harry. I think Kevin told him what was happening, and then what he said was, "It's your day. If you want to invite him, you can." And Harry actually, I gave him the job of going to Eastleigh Airport. I remember he had a Mercedes, Harry. I think it was only like a sports car, two-door thing. But his job was to go to Eastleigh Airport and pick up Kevin, who flew in from Hamburg, with a fellow called Gunter Netzer.
Yeah, I remember Gunter Netzer.
Who was a fabulous player for Germany, but he was like the commercial man for Hamburg. And they sent him with Kevin, because he wasn't playing for me the next day. It was a funny one. It was done like probably about February time, with a view to him signing then, announced it, but then he went back and finished the season with them. And we had from then till the following season, and the build-up was amazing because
the buzz around the city.
Well, it was a continuous thing going on, and I mean the post was coming in sacks, and from estate agents and everybody, you know, had houses for.
It certainly put us on the map, didn't it? As a
football
club.
It made people sit up a bit, and but how it was kept quiet. I mean, I never told anybody anything about any signing, but Liverpool knew, because they had a little bit of. I don't think people realise. I think they had maybe his first shout.
Yeah, was it a buyback, wasn't it?
Because he left them. They didn't want him to go, but he was ready to move abroad. And I think there was so little clause, they got our first shout. So obviously somebody had to tell them. They kept it quiet. Hamburg kept it quiet. And the night before, I think it must have been a Monday, well, it was a Monday morning, and I just sent out a thing to the Press Association saying, can you tell all the leading press to be at the Potter's Heron on Monday, 12 o'clock, whatever. Now, Monday is normally their day off, because they've done games at the weekend and whatever. And for them to turn up without asking what it was about, the stories that came out later on, some thought I was leaving, some thought we were announcing a new ground. There's a laugh. 1980. And I got Bawley along because he was captain at the time, and I told him to come. He didn't know. He thought he was on This Is Your Life. He hadn't got a clue. Mick Channon tells everybody he knew, but he didn't. He said, I could have gone, but I went racing instead. But he didn't know. Unless Kevin had given him a little whisper, but I don't think he did. And it was a complete surprise, and everybody sort of turned up. But the night before, my wife and I had been invited out to Leslie Thomas, the writer.
The writer, yeah.
And he's a bit of a gypsy, he moves around all over the place, but in those days he lived in Bewley, beside the castle, and there was another couple there, and when we arrived, nobody had mobile phones or anything in those days, And I got hold of him and I said, look, I hope you don't mind, but I've given you a number in case I'm needed in an emergency. And he's being a journalist by nature. He said, aye, something happening? I said, no, I said, just if something crops up. And it was a Sunday night, so he kept at me during the evening. You're doing something, aren't you? And I said, no, you'll find out. And we were leaving his house after midnight. The other couple went to their car, and he kept saying, what's happening here? What is it like, you know? And so I opened the door, my wife got in the car, and I came back to the door, and I said, he said, you're signing somebody, aren't you? And I went, and I looked at my watch, it was nearer 1 o'clock than 12, I think, and I thought, well, he cannot be telling the press now, it wouldn't be. And I went, KK, and he went, KK, right. And I got in the car and drove off. And the next day, it was all announced, and eventually he got through to me, and he said, you, so-and-so, he says, I was up all blooming night, he says, lying awake, trying to think, and he said, and then I said, I've got it. And my wife shot up in bed, said, what? He says, Kevin Keelan, the goalkeeper from Norwich City, and he went to sleep. and the next day, it was Kevin Keegan. But lots of different stories came out about all that, and he was significant insofar as the club hadn't put prices up or anything for quite a while, and you see, there was time to think and to work things out, because it wasn't, as I say, playing next Saturday. It was a few weeks before the end of the season, end of summer, and they actually doubled the prices. Nobody said a word. And I was talking to the commercial manager from those days, Mark Price, recently, and he doubled the price of a programme. And he said nobody blinked, because there were people who thought they were getting value for money, and virtually he was paid for straight away. And wherever we went, the club we went to play had the biggest crowd. And in those days, you got a share of the gate. See, that one of the most significant changes in football, which people don't realise, is not so much the Premiership, that was massive, but they brought in a rule quietly where the home team started to keep their own money. So the big clubs got bigger, whereas the small capacity like we were, that's what left you way behind. It's not like nowadays where they all share the television money or the masses of money. So Liverpool, Man United, and their 50,000 kept everything. We had 15,000. Now before that, we would go there and get a share of the 50,000. That stopped. So they were delighted, because whenever we turned up, they got their best gate. Everybody wanted to see Kevin. And we did all right, you know, we had a couple of good years, and we were in Europe, and
Hamburg, I remember going away to Hamburg.
Did you go there?
Yeah, I remember that one.
But you see, a lot of people, like the fellow who said all those big names, he thought they were all there when we won the cup, but they weren't. It was only Mick was there, and none of them were there when we were second in the league. Now that, if anything, was your best achievement.
Second to Liverpool, Laurie, wasn't it?
Well, 3 points behind Liverpool. And
we were top at one stage, weren't we?
Well, first time in the club's history. The only time. No, and but they were in that team. The big three there were Alan, Bawley, Keegan, Shannon. We won at Middlesbrough. We came off, we won 1-0. And the old fellow up there on the door came in and said, well done, Laurie, top of the league. And I went, aye. What's he on about? But everybody else had lost, and we had gone top, and that was a good trip back.
Laurie, tell us a little bit about Mark Wright and the shower incident.
Fondest memory of our greatest day in '76. How do you perceive that day? What can you remember best?
Well, I remember everything.
Yeah.
Everything from the from getting up in the morning to Mick Shannon ringing me room. Said, Gaffer, have you seen the price? And I said, no. We said, we're 5 to 1. and he said, some papers are 6 to 1. 2 horses in a race, that's how we looked at it. And I went, well, that's amazing, you know. And that was the part of the thing. Well, we were not that bad, the team, are we? Come on. And
did you put a few quid on it when you heard that?
No, I was never a bet. No, they put me off betting, that lot. And they famously took me to place Plumpton, is it, down in Brighton or something?
Yeah.
Farmers Field type of thing. And I backed more winners than they all had put together. And the money was piled up, and I said, what are we doing now, boys? Do we buy champagne and that? And they were foaming at the mouth because they couldn't believe they were the experts. And I had my system, and I use it now for a bit of fun. Eeny, meeny, miny, mo, and you go back up, catch a rascal. Got to be careful now. Can't go Ron Atkinson. Rascal by the toe. If he squeals, let him go. And where you stop, you back that one and the one underneath. Or if you want to count them, it's number 20, number 21. If it was only 7, you go 7, 14, 20, 21. And if I'd done that at Cheltenham, on the first day, I had at least a second or a first in every race.
Really?
Never put a penny on. I didn't even go. But just to prove a point to them. But racing was a very, very big part of the club. The directors, Herbert Blagrave, the president was a big horse breeder and owner. And he said to me once, he said, that Mick Channon knows more about horse flesh than I do. Because Mick, on the bus, a lot of them would be studying the form, and Mick was studying the books. They were studying to put bets on, but Mick was studying to go into business.
Yeah.
He was always going to go into it, and he's been a huge success.
Well, he has. Yeah.
But we all got on very, very well whenever we see each other, and
that's great.
It was a wonderful. But the Cup day was. We'd done our homework, you know. When every time a team we drew, I went to see them. In those days, managers were always on the road, on the motorway. And on a Saturday when I couldn't go, I'd send Ted. Ted would go with somebody else, maybe. And like Man United, between the semi and the final, I went with, and Ted would always come just to keep me company. But on the Saturdays in between, when we had a game, Ted would go. And we didn't leave anything to chance. You know, I thought we did our homework. I mean, like Peter Rodriguez, I told him his job was Gordon Hill. And when he was substituted, Gordon Hill, that was a great moment for me, because I thought, that's significant. Rodriguez had done his job. See, what happened on the day, the big lads drew on all their experience. And Rodriguez had played in World Cups, and Mick Channon and Peter Osgood had played in internationals. Jimmy McCalliog had played at Wembley before for Scotland. And they came up trumps, the big uns, and they carried the younger ones with them. And people like Mel Blythe and Jimmy Steele at the back, they were terrific. And Ian Turner, he was keeping it out with his kneecap, his heel, everything in the first 10, 15 minutes. And there wasn't a weak link in the team. And there were a good group, a good team. The night out was always going to be, we're staying up in London anyway, talk with the town. We were in the hotel in the Royal Garden before we went out, and the directors had laid on a drinks reception for Mr. Blagrave, the president, and we were there with our wives. And a fella came and said, there's a phone call from Mr. McMenemy. And I went outside in the foyer and picked the phone up, and it was Tommy Docherty. And they were, Manchester United were down in another part of London. He said, I'm just ringing you up quietly to say well done.
Oh, that's nice.
And I went, Tom, well, you know, fancy that, I can't believe it. He said, no, he said, if we can't win it, I'm pleased you have. And I said, I can't believe that, Tom. He said, I'm crying when I'm ringing you. And I said, well, Tom, I hope you win it next year. And so it was all emotional, like, and then and we went and had a good night out. So the next year, it was about the 4th round, I think, we drew Manchester United. And I met him when he came down. I said, Tom, you come in. I said, remember that night? I said, forget it. I said, I hope we don't win it this year, win it next year. And of course, we drew here. They beat us in extra time, I think, up there.
Yeah, they did.
And they carried on. And he rang me up before the final and said, where did you go last year? What did you do? And they did everything we did. They went to the same hotels. And you may remember when they won and they ran around, and him and the lad Tommy Kavanagh, his trainer, when they got underneath the gantries, they held the cup up. And of course I was up on telly, but everybody on the gantry thought it was them, and they're all waving away. But I'd like to think it was he was showing me our turn, you know. So loads of memories, and the day after the coming back, getting on the bus, coming out of London. We all had a late night, obviously, and they were half asleep. We'd been away, you see, from about the Tuesday or Wednesday, cases in the back of the bus and everything. And we knew we were coming back to the Dell, and the families were on another bus, and we were going to get together on the open top then and go around. And we thought we'd just have a gentle snooze for an hour and a half on the way back. And then we realised, coming through London even, out of London, Hammersmith and places like that, people were on the bridges waiting for us to go, and they were all waving. So I told them to get the cup out of the box. Fortunately, it was in the bus, it wasn't in the boot. And everybody took turns at standing in the front.
Funny story about Peter Osgood and the cup. How he slept with it one night.
Well, we all did that, but not together. No, they nicked the cup.
Yeah.
They pinched the cup. We were entertained in a lot of places after that. And one night it was a casino on Portswood.
Tiberius, that's what he said, yeah.
And it was a lovely night, because I mean, casinos notoriously serve good food. And we had a good dinner and everything, and there was, if they wanted to go and have a bit gamble, they could, but it was their night of honouring the club. And the cup was passed round for people to have their picture taken. And as the night went on, my wife and I went off home, and the next morning I was walking by the telephone. It was Keith Honey, the secretary, and he said, "The cup's missing." And I went, "What are you talking about, Keith?" And he was really upset. And then the chairman rang me. I don't know which one rang first, but the chairman, "Manager." Whenever he called me manager, I knew I was in trouble. He said, "Where's the blooming cup?" I said, "Chairman, don't be daft." I said, "It'll be there." Because I'm worried then. I got up, got ready, and I went to the ground. And in those days at the Dell, you walked in the entrance and turned right. There was a door, an outer office, and then another door, my office. And the players were starting to come in to get ready for training. And I heard the outer door open, then I heard a clanging noise, and the door shut. And by the time I got up and went, the cup was lying on its side with the lid, and I heard footsteps. And I looked out, I couldn't see anybody. And I picked the cup up, looked a bit sorry for itself. And the story came out eventually, as they all do. They'd finished up in the Tiberius, most of them had gone home, but Jimmy Steele and Ozzy had the cup on their table. People had their pictures, and they were ready to go, and they said, "Well, who's going to take this?" And they just picked it up and walked out with it. But the best part was they'd walk round by, there used to be a little stall selling burgers and up by the Gorman, was it? By the Civic Centre.
Yeah, I remember that, yeah. Right,
and all the dossers and the tramps and all that were gathered around, and they'd pulled up in this car, and they got out. Well, of course, everybody's gone, "No, it's the boys," like, because everybody was still in euphoric mood. And the fella behind the counter, he said, "What do you want, lads?" And "It's on me," he says. "What do you want? Coffee or tea?" And whatever they wanted, coffee probably, black, strong. And he said to them, "What do you want it in, a cup or a mug?" And Ozzy said, "Hang on a minute." And he went to the back of the car, and he come back with he says, "Put it in there." And apparently they passed it around all the tramps and that had a feel of it, and it's innocent stuff. Well, that was invented after the days I'm on about. I think somebody came up with a saying, didn't they? The spirit, it was a commercial thing. In those days, it was team spirit. I mean, for us, it was, you see, you only had a small group of players, not as big a squad as I mean, I look now in the Echo, and we've got over 40 odd players. A, we couldn't have afforded it in those days, and B, I don't think I would want it. I wouldn't even want it necessarily myself now. But the fact is that I was talking to Nick Holmes earlier today and Bawley and them, that the heartaches that managing gives you. I mean, tactics and coaching is one thing. I mean, I was pigeonholed as a manager, not so much a coach. I was the first one to bring in sweeper system in the league. Ruben and Nick whenever needed, and that worked terrific for us. That was coaching, we were talking about the League Cup when we got to the semi-final against Leeds and we were underdogs. They had a better team than us supposedly. We were 2 down and we pulled up the 2-2. Nick actually scored one and Stevie Williams. And in the second leg, they were favourites still down at the Dell, even though we were at home. And in the team talk the day before, I said, right, Manny Andrzejewski is going to play and he's going to mark Tony Curry. And they all looked, they didn't agree, but I wouldn't let them disagree. I said, that is what's going to happen. And because normally you would do that in an away game. And they were thinking, well, we were at home, we'd be attacking. But it worked. I knew he was a key man, and if you gave him any room, he could kill you. And Manny didn't give him a kick. And we won. And Terry Curran, of course, scored his one and only goal, and that got us to another final. But the sad thing, getting back to the manager's bit then, was having to tell somebody like Manny that not only was he not playing at Wembley, he wasn't even a sub, because you could only have one sub. And he deserved to be part of it. But I decided to go with a forward, Tony Seeley. The same happened with Hughie Fisher in the FA Cup. We wouldn't have got to the final without Hughie. You know the story about the extra time, Aston Villa. And without Hughie, and Hughie was my sub. I don't think he argued with the team selection. Underneath he wanted to play, but he was sub. Now when Bobby scored with 7 minutes to go, I turned to Hughie on the bench and I said, Hughie, I'm sorry, I won't be able to put you on. He said, I know, boss, don't worry. He said, I couldn't change anything then, but I wanted to keep what we had. And Hughie is a professional, but he was part of it. So they were hard decisions. Paul Bennett probably didn't like me for a long time because he played at Bradford City. Maybe he's had another game earlier on, but he certainly played at Bradford. I think Nick missed that game and he played, and it was perfect for Paul then, a lower division team, up and unders, and he won everything, but he was only in the 14 at Wembley. He wasn't even on the bench. Because we only had 14 players right through the whole campaign. Didn't even have a second goalkeeper. We had the team, it was Paul Bennett, Hughie Fisher and Pat Earls. All good lads and good pros. The other goalkeeper in the club then was a lad called Steve Middleton.
Do you remember that day you signed Franny Benali?
Yes, I can remember, I couldn't tell you the exact date, but I can remember going to his... You're asking me that because somebody said I didn't sign him, aren't you? I can't believe. I went to Franny's house in Rose Road, next to the Rose Road Centre, and with his mother, who was either divorced or a widow, I don't know, and little Franny. And yeah, I've actually got the letter in my house somewhere in the files. Signed him as a schoolboy, yeah, Franny. And he was a centre forward.
Yeah.
So whoever told you that I didn't sign
England schoolboys, he played for England schoolboys as centre forward.
Whoever said that I didn't sign Franny, you just send him to me. One thing I've got is a good memory. It's like all of those guys. I mean, the Wallace brothers, they were all signed by me, and only Danny got in the team while I was manager. Alan Shearer I signed, but he wasn't a player, he was a schoolboy still when I left. Chris Nicholl probably was managing when he got in the first team. 17 he got in, didn't he? And Danny got in at 16 and a half, I think, when I put him in with Ruben at Manchester United.
Man United away.
They didn't know they were playing until I told them we were 2 hours before. And the two twins, no, they came after Danny. And Matt Letizier, story behind him, his schoolmaster was taking his team around Fratton Park and from Guernsey, and he rang the ground and said, any chance they had a bit of time, could they come to our ground as well? And I said, certainly. And I got one of the staff to show them round. And because of that, he wasn't in the group, but the teacher was so grateful. He wrote to me after to thank me, and he said, if ever I can help you. And I wrote back and said, well, if you see any good kids, let me know. And we must have given him a better welcome than Portsmouth. And he recommended Matt Letizier and another youngster called Graham Lasso. And they both came over. and I don't know why Graham. I think Graham got homesick or whatever, but because they do get homesick, Channel Islanders.
I'd emailed Harvey when you said he was meeting you, and there's something I used to write to you quite often, and you used to give me replies back.
Oh, right.
And going back to the 1979 Cup final, I couldn't get down to Southampton for my ticket. I was only 14 at the time,
Right.
and I wrote a letter. And it's funny because I've got your book with me here, and it says in there that all the liggers in the world turned up when we got to the cup final day. And I thought, blimey, I was one of them. But I wrote to you and explained the situation, and I couldn't get to Southampton from Basingstoke. And you sent me, or your secretary reminded you that I wrote to you quite often.
Yeah.
And on the Thursday when I got home from school, my mum said there's a letter on the side there, and I opened it and it was written on the bottom. My secretary reminded you write quite often, please find enclosed the 2 tickets.
Yeah, right.
And
you flogged them, did you?
No way. I'd like to say thank you very much for that in person, because you gave me one of the best memories that day, and that was my dad, who wasn't a great football in person, but he had to take me up there. And when David Peach went round Peter Shilton and put the ball in the back of the net, and everybody went berserk, I just stopped for a minute because I watched my dad, and my dad was just going absolutely bananas. I've never seen my dad go so.
Converted, was it?
Oh, thanks very much.
With a maid, we chatted about our teams to say who's worse and who's best. So I talked even clearer about Keegan and Shearer. They mentioned athletics as if you'd never have guessed. Never have guessed. I encountered a man, was built like a tank. Said we ain't a hope in hell this year with players like ours. So I talked to him gentle, increasingly mental, and preached about our awesome squad for hours and hours.
The few keepers ever to save a penalty from Charlie Mitten, who was known as the Penalty King. Will you please welcome John Christie. The earliest triumph for manager Cliff Oxford. More than 350 appearances for the Saints, and his 11 goals include the famous one in the third round in 1976 that kept us in the cup. Hugh Fisher. Still with us, club captain Jason Dodd.
We'll keep on meeting till we die. Jones and I. Take it away, boys. Jones and I. Miss and I can swear I've heard someone say please. Thank you. Please. You feel much better. And if the lights are caught up with you, quite as much as I do. Bless the beach and the birds. Gotta be near you every night, every day. I couldn't be happy any other way.
1955, Ted, who was the man who deserved at the time, was appointed manager and stayed for 18 years. 18 years he became the manager for us, and that was awesome, wasn't it? Let's be fair, absolutely fantastic. And he handed over to my great mate, and I love him to bits, and he's one of my favourite people in life, Laurie McMillan. And he, I tell you what, I was an Herbert. I really was an Herbert in my days. I played hard and I sit there and I love it. I really do. I'm just an honest guy. I love it, and I love Southampton Football Club. I really do. I'm a great fan. You know that. You know I'm a great fan. I'm willing here. Guys like Hughie Fisher, who, let's be fair, people don't realise what Hughie Fisher did for this club. Hughie Fisher was an unsung hero. He really was. He's over there tonight. Remember the Shannon Dell. We got Jimmy Steele over there, Big Jim Steele. That's why we're here, ladies and gentlemen. We're here because we're Southampton fans. Nick Holmes, where's Nick? Where's Nick? Stand up, Nick. What a great player he was, you know. He was my legs, he was. I was the brains, he was the legs. Yes, is that right, mate? Can I say that? Paul Bennett, where's Paul? Where's Paul?
Our next speaker tonight is somebody who was with this club in the 3rd division, through the 2nd into the 1st and all the way into Europe. I don't suppose that'll ever happen again at club level. He's here for the same reason that we're all here, because of his love and affection for Ted Bates. He's come all the way from Australia. It's a privilege to introduce him. Ladies and gentlemen, John Sydenham.
Okay, before I start to talk about Ted, I've got a couple of things to say. First of all, I'd like to just mention a couple of players that are here that is just fantastic for me to see tonight. Players that were playing with me right from the very beginning. Very, very special people to me. Ted spent the whole evening tut-tutting, complaining. When I turned and asked him what was your problem, I said to him, he said, it's a real shame. Why is he wasting his time being James Bond when he could be a footballer? And that's the way Ted looked at life. to have this opportunity to talk about a man who did so much for me personally has been very, very special. And I'm sure we're all going to be feeling very proud that we've played a part when the big day arrives of the unveiling of the statue. Thanks very much.
I just wanted to convey to everybody that my mum is sorry she couldn't be with us this evening. Quite simply, she hasn't felt able to sort of come to the stadium recently. The last time she was here was with Dad when she accepted Terry Payne's first England cap, which was 2 years ago. She went public last year in Dad's biography to say why she would have preferred a bust instead of a statue. But she's been very impressed with the courtesy that the Ted Bates Trust has shown her. And they've involved her in every stage of the proceedings. She has met with Ian Brennan and she was really impressed with the work that he's done and how keen he appeared to actually make a statue of Dad. So she's really behind the trust and everything he's trying to do. As a token of her support for the trust effort, she has actually sent a framed picture of Dad receiving his MBE to go into the auction this evening. But the main reason I would like to sort of say something is on behalf of Mum and the family. I would like to thank not only the trust, but also everyone that's here tonight who has supported the efforts to get a statue for Dad. It's very difficult as a family member to appreciate how he affected the lives of others. And I would just like to say thank you to the Trust and to the supporters for being so genuine in your support for all the work that he did for the club. Thank you.
Manchester United for that famous semi-final when Morris Setters kicked you 20 feet in the air in the first 5 minutes and I thought they were going to kill him, but he was so quick. And to see him now, like me, old and can't walk very well, it's bloody wonderful. So it was just me cheering Ozzy up, no end, not I guess this is personal to you, John, as well, I imagine. I imagine it must be. FA Cup, third, Main Road, 1960. No? Well, you also been around the world a couple of times, I suppose. Oh, I love people like this. This is a piece of cake. Makes my job a piece of piss. I can see signatures here. There's 1, 2, 3. I can see quite clearly they are still here, but they are faded. But this is the ball, the hat-trick ball for Derek Reeves with the programme. And there it is, Manchester City. And that's the original plan. It is mint.
Next we spoke to Daily Echo journalist Adam Leach and then to the fans themselves. We chatted with Gavin, Nicky, Andy and Barry and many more. We even managed to meet up with 2 mascots from the 2003 Cup final. The Dream Fans DVD production team couldn't finish this documentary without speaking to James Smith, a fan who lives and breathes Southampton Football Club and gave his own special insights. And also Malcolm Taylor, better known to All Saints followers as the famous kitman Woggy.
Unintentional. Last summer we heard you cheering crazy, yeah. You made opposition fans seem downright lazy. I won't tell you it's alright, I won't pretend that it's also alright. Won't say that it's absolutely unconventional. We're just the fans who live next door. And we're just the fans that give you all. And we get our kicks
spirit of Southampton is the fans. It's always been the fans. I've grown up supporting Saints, and obviously now cover them. And it's always been about the fans. You know, down the Dell, standing at the Dell on the milk crates as a boy in Milton Road End, sitting in the lower East Stand. The Matthew Letizia, the last goal at the Dell against Arsenal. That's the spirit of Southampton. It's about the fans, the camaraderie, and that'll always be the spirit. You know, players and managers come and go the whole time, but the fans are the ones that always stay with their club. Even now they're in the Championship, the fans will still be there next season. They always will be.
What about the family spirit? What's that?
Yeah, the family spirit. Yeah, is definitely part of it. Only thing I feel about that is that, like all football clubs, with the advent of the Premiership, it kind of has lessened the family spirit at every club, and I do include Southampton in that. But nevertheless, it is one of the more family-orientated clubs, and perhaps now they're down a level, it will realign again. Ted Bates, another legend. I actually live next door to his daughter, so I know. Vaguely knew Ted, met him a few times. Obviously, the kind of service he gave to the club, everybody will say it, but you'll never ever see that again from anybody at any club, I'm sure. It's just unbelievable to have held all the positions that he did at the football club, to have basically been the founder of the modern era of Saints. Yeah, the club owes him a huge debt. They wouldn't be where they are today if it wasn't for him and everything he'd done with the club. That includes everybody else coming in, and you know, he laid the foundations for Laurie McMenemy to come in and provide the success which has propelled Saints really to where they remain for so long.
I would hope that when Ted has been suitably honoured, and you know, there's perhaps a little more work to be done after that, that we could then look at something for Matt, and we should do. He's been, you know, a lot of the supporters appreciate what he did for it, but the past of Saints is rich with players, and you could equally say the same for the likes of Mick Shannon, Terry Payne, who played big parts in the club. You know, Matt's up there with them, but the first thing is Ted Bates.
Franny Benali, I think, just like Matt, but in a different way, you know, he sort of encompassed the spirit of Southampton. He always, I think, to be fair to Franny, he always knew his limitations, if you like. You know, he could do a job for Saints, and he did do a fantastic job, but he never got delusions of grandeur or anything like that, or got the ideas of legislation. He was at Southampton, he loved being at Southampton, he did his best for Southampton, he never shirked anything, especially not a tackle. I think it's probably cost the club a few quid in balls going over the side of the stand, but other than that, I mean, bless him, he was almost, you know, he was the spirit of Southampton. And the thing about Franny was he was just such a nice bloke as well. He really was a lovely bloke, a fantastic family who I was lucky enough to meet once. And it just, everything about him was just so down to earth until he got on the pitch, and then he was just this, you know, raving loony kind of marauding left back who crunched people left, right, and centre. But I mean, he, you know, some of his clearances, his goal line clearances and things like that, you never forget him. He was the true sort of cult hero, if you like, for Southampton Football Club. Matt will be remembered for his skills. Franny will just be remembered for being Franny.
Tell me, why do you support Southampton Football Club?
Because they're a good team, and that's where we live. That's where we come from.
But why don't you support Manchester United? They have more caps, better players.
Because we don't come from Manchester. We don't come from Manchester.
You were mascots in a very important game for Southampton Football Club, for the history of the club.
Yeah.
What was it like?
It was really fun, but it was like really scary when you first went out because it was really noisy.
Here in the tunnel, you can hear them all like clapping and that, and the music on. It's like it makes you get butterflies in your body.
And what was you playing?
Mine was Claus Lindenberg.
And mine was Anders Hensen.
Where do you sit in St Mary's when you go?
In a seat.
No, what's that? I mean, yeah.
Yeah, I remember the mosaic. We came in here at 9 o'clock in the morning just to start laying out the letters along the Kingston stand here, and from that basically we just filled in the gaps afterwards. It took us about 2 hours to lay out the letters, and 3 hours to finish out filling in the blocks, but when we finished it looked really good. I mean, seeing pictures of it and it looked absolutely brilliant. Blackburn as well. That was a brilliant day. I mean, I remember coming outside with Jim. We're outside the main entrance, and we had a picture taken for the Echo, just with all the yellow gear on, trying to get many people come for the yellow gear, balloons, etc. And the atmosphere at the start of the game was absolutely fantastic. Spirit is probably fans. They've been absolutely amazing. They're always around, they're always chanting. I think our recent relegation was the key of that. You know, we just been relegated, and you expect most fans to be booing the team. We had the Northern stand over there, just basically shouting, "We'll support you ever more," and everything. It was fantastic, and I think these fans are the ones that have kept, for instance, Harry Redknapp still in a job. Because if we hadn't done so well, I think he might have just gone. But I think the fans are main, but that everyone plays their part in the spirit of Southampton.
Who was your hero when you were a child?
Neil Maddison. Neil Maddison was always my hero. I'm not really sure why. I think I met him one day at the training ground and I just really liked him. And he played in midfield and I was always a midfielder. And I remember I named my first ever pet after him. My first ever pet was a hamster called Maddie. Rupert gets a lot of stick. And a lot of it I think is quite unfair because if you look at clubs like Leeds, they've done what a lot of people have been saying that Rupert should do, and now they're in financial ruin and they're heading in the wrong direction. So possibly I think he could have been a bit more adventurous, but overall I think he's done a good job for us. He's got us a marvellous new stadium and we're financially secure. And you can see what trouble some of the clubs are having who have put all their eggs into one basket and then failed. So I think overall Rupert's done a good job for us. Franny Benali he's just a legend. He's just Southampton through and through. He's just one of those players like you think Matty, you think Dodsey, Benali. They're the three that come to my mind. As quite a young Saints fan, the first three that come to my mind that you think, yeah, these people are Southampton through and through. Like you could cut them in half and it would just say Southampton down the middle of their body. Unfortunately, I wasn't there to see Franny score when he scored against Leicester. I really wish I had been. I've got the video clip on my computer, and I really wish I'd been there to see it. So unfortunately, one of my memories of Franny is one of his few own goals that he scored against us. I remember a great diving header one time. I can't remember who it was against. But no, Franny's just one of those people who would always put 100% in. He was never going to be a superstar. He was never going to be compared with Roberto Carlos or anyone for his silky skills, but he's one of those people you always wanted on the team sheet. The story about Cardiff was that our family, we've got 3 season tickets for my mum, my dad and my brother, and I usually can't make the games because I've got other things on Saturday, so I'm quite often listening to the radio or watching TV if it's on. And my mum was taking me to college on the Friday, the day before the game, and she just said to me, "Where are you going to be watching the game?" And I said, "Oh, I'm probably just going to watch it at home." And she goes, "Oh, you're not going to go into town and watch it in the pub?" And I was like, "Well, no, because it's going to be so busy, I just don't know if I'm even going to be able to see. So I might probably just stay at home with a few mates." And she just goes, "Oh, well, do you want to go?" And I was like, "Of course I want to go." And she just goes, "Well, I've been thinking about it for quite a while, and you can have my ticket." And this is about 2 o'clock on the afternoon, the day before the game, and I said, "Mum, are you being serious?" And she goes, she's kind of nodded her head. I was like, "Please don't joke about this, Mum." And she goes, "I'm being deadly serious. If you want to go, you can take my ticket." And I was like, "Oh my God, I can't believe it." So then that afternoon, I was just running around telling everyone that I was going to Cardiff, and then I was into town buying everything yellow I could possibly find. Scarves, balloons, like a shirt, and I was just like, oh. The spirit of Southampton, it brings people together. You could really sum it up before the FA Cup final. You'd walk into town in Southampton, and everywhere you just see Southampton badges and Southampton flags, and it's just the spirit of Southampton to me is just something that brings people together and gives you a common cause for something to love and something to feel passionate about. And you can just be walking through town and you'll see someone wearing a Saints shirt, and you won't have a clue who they are, but you'll just wave and say, "Hi, all right, mate, how you doing?" Just because they're a Saints fan, and it's hard to put it into words, but it just brings people together, and it's just something that it's just brilliant to just feel you are a Saints fan. You're just proud.
I've been involved with the club since 76, 77 season, which is 29 years. Started off as a steward at the Archers Road end of the old Dell, and just worked my way through over the years. After I'd done 5 years behind the Archers Road end as a steward, then went into the car park and worked there for a couple of seasons. Then worked on the gate, the Players' Gate that was, and looked after the players coming in and out. And then I had a job in the boardroom, looking after the directors and the VIPs on a match day. And then was taken aboard a few years later with Guy Askham as the chairman then. And then worked on the coach and done the food on the coach for the players, and with Lou Chatterley and Laurie McManamy. And just worked my way through to when Rupert Lowe came, and I became a kit man, which I never had a kit man in those days. We just had like Lou Chatterley, and I used to help obviously, but not officially had a kit man. When Rupert Lowe came, I became the kit man with David Jones as the manager, and here we are, Woggy. Woggy. Well, I was 5 years old when I had that nickname. I had a brother who was in the Royal Navy, and he had a little coloured lad who was gollywogs, and a jar of Robertson's jam jars. They used to call them gollywogs in those days. And I had massive curls, and they just said a little woggy with this, and it just stuck to me.
Correct.
Just couldn't get rid of the nickname.
Best thing about working in Southampton.
But it's just been involved. I've lived in Southampton all my life. I'm born and bred there, and being part. I used to play football for myself on an amateur basis, and then to come and join the professionals, it's absolutely fantastic. It's the job you do. Like I say, I love coming to work.
It's like a dream.
It is a dream. It is. Yeah, as far as I'm concerned, locally, I'm not being big-headed, but I'm well known in Southampton. There's lots of people saying, "Well, how the hell did you get that job?" So I'm an envy of a lot of people in Southampton. Greatest ever player. Well, if we go back, if we go back to when I first started watching, and you talk about, there's lots of players like Eric Day was a tremendous player in the old days, and you come to Terry Payne and John Sydenham, and they were another good players. And you come to Matt Letizia was a fantastic player. Matt was fantastic. Mickey Shannon. The best one, well, I'd say Tiz. I would think he was. When I look back at even like Terry Payne, I had high respect for Terry Payne. I think Matt would probably just come out on top of that.
What about Laurie McManamy?
Laurie, as I say, the managers, I've never had a problem with any of the managers, and Laurie's no exception. Obviously he left under a bit of a cloud, but that was between him and whoever, the chairman and everybody else who was at the top at that time. But he was a good manager. In fact, when we look at it, he's probably the best manager we've had so far, because we won the FA Cup under him, and, although he took us down, but we came back up as well. So when you look at managers, you must say, well, obviously Laurie was the best manager we had as far as success is concerned.
Ted Bates is Mr. Southampton really,
Ted Bates
for me, I didn't live really his time.
Well,
so.
Ted has been here so long, and as a player, I'd say, as a manager and as a director and everything, he was a tremendous guy, absolutely tremendous. He had so much in his brain, you could tell you, and he was fantastic, absolutely fantastic.
Fans or
the spirit.
That, or family.
Well, yeah, the club has always been based on a homely club, the family club, which is always has been. It still is. And obviously, you have a close encounter with your fans. I must say, you get to know the fans. They get to know what's going on with the club, how it's run. Obviously, when you get new people come in, it does differ a little bit, because you think, well, hang on, they can't do it like that. That's not the way we run this place. So then it's up to the chairman to sort that out and say, well, hang on, we don't run a club like that. But at the end of the day, the fans are tremendous. They are tremendous. There's no doubt about that. They're tremendous fans.
Yes, about Shire, Matty, or Wallace when they were younger.
Oh well, there's plenty of stories, but I'm afraid I couldn't repeat some of those stories because it wouldn't go down very well. But three great guys. We had. It's to say those days it's changed a little bit. We had at the Dell. It was like I say, it was very knit, close together, sort of a place, but. It's got, as I said, it's more money and it's big business, and that kind of atmosphere has definitely changed a bit. But, great guys, they were. We had some tremendous little get-togethers after the game, like that, which I'm afraid I can't repeat. Lazy and relaxed. Matt, he's always been like that. He is. When you think about it, he's just that type of person, but. He had the ability. This is the thing with Matt. No matter what he done and what he said, he had the ability. He could do it, and actions always speaks louder than words. And he was certainly an
Well,
action.
Finale. He has been another
Franny-
legend in the club.
Franny is on the same as Matt. They all coming through together, and he's absolutely gentle. Tremendous guy on the field. I wouldn't say an animal, that would be too much. But a tremendous bowler, so strong and physical, and you would not think it was the same person off the field. He was like a chalk and cheese as far as that was concerned. But what a player! 110% for the club all the time, and he still is even there. If he's not playing, but he's still 110% for this club. Unbelievable guy.
It's hard to tell when I actually became a Saints fan, but I've been taken to games at the Dell when I was about 6 or 7. So it's probably around that age when I actually started really feeling the passion. It was, I can remember one game, it was against Newcastle back at the Dell, and I sort of supported Newcastle as well, so I didn't really know who to support. I think I had a Saints shirt and a Newcastle shirt on. I was in the home fans, and my dad was saying, "Come on, support the Saints, support the Saints." And I had black and white trousers on, so I was half and half. But we actually won the game 3-1, and I think it was that time where I actually saw like the passion and the belief and the friendliness between all the fans at the Dell for the first time, and I came away definitely a Saints fan. So if I could point out one moment, it would probably be that game. Saints hero, obviously everyone's going to say Matt Mathias because he was such a great player, but if I could go away to someone a little bit different, I'd actually say Jeff Kenner, because I was always sort of idolising him, because when I was a young player playing for my team, I was a defender, so I was always keeping my eye on the defence, and it was always him. He just always showed passion and skill. For some reason, I always picked out him as my favourite player, and I've always remembered him. I always look out for him if he's playing for a different team, and yeah, I'd say Jeff Kenner was probably my favourite player of being a Saints. I wasn't, but my brother was. He was a mascot. I can't remember which game. It may have been Sheffield United, but I was actually quite jealous of him at that point, because he got the phone call saying you're going to be a mascot for the Saints. I couldn't believe it. I was absolutely gutted. He got to meet all the players. He got to go in the changing room, meet the tiers and stuff. And but we did get free tickets to the game, so I did get to watch. And I was very jealous. I almost asked if I could go out with him, but I didn't think I'd be too cocky. But no, it was, he's also a big Saints fan, so it was good for him as well. Well, it's only recently that I've had a season ticket at St Mary's, so I've seen the most games here. But one great game would have to be 4-0 against Tottenham in the FA Cup. That was just, I came with all my friends. I sat here, I think, in the Kingsland Northern corner, and that was just a fantastic time, fantastic game. And also against Wolves when we beat them 2-0, also in the FA Cup, because I actually got on TV as well. I'm not one for being in the TV too much, you know, but I was on Sky Sports dancing around with my friend in a stupid wig, and very embarrassing but also funny at the same time. Probably Ian Bramford. Probably Ian Bramford, you know. No, probably Gordon Strachan, because I can't remember too many managers at the Dell because I was too young, but Gordon Strachan was just so passionate and so funny, you know. He got us to Europe, he got us to the FA Cup final, 8th in the league, and that was when we were playing some really good football. That was when Beattie was firing in the goals, you know. He got the best out of everyone.
Rupello, you met him as a person. What's he like?
Well, obviously it wasn't a full half-hour chat, it was just like a 5-minute thing, but he actually seems like a nice guy. Whether the fans don't actually see him as a god, obviously they don't, but I mean that's a shame, because he's got us this brilliant stadium, and I don't think it's his fault that we got relegated. It's the players' fault, if anything. Yeah, maybe could have spent more money on players. Perhaps we should have had management stability, but no, I don't think it's his fault that we got relegated. And I think a lot of the blame should be on the players and not below, to be honest.
Okay. Right, Jim, you told me that your brother was a Saints player,
yeah, he was.
But I already know that he betrayed the loyalty. He went somewhere else.
He went to Portsmouth, actually. He played for Pompey Academy. You asked why? Just because he wanted to play football, I guess. He sort of hid his Southampton past, and not if you forget it, but when he was at training, he just pretended that he was a Portsmouth fan. I mean, that sounds
How do you live with that?
What do I mean? Well, he didn't tell anyone that he was a Saints fan. And he just, if people were talking about football, I imagine he would just go along with it and go, yeah, Fratton Park's a really nice ground, yeah. But no, he played for Pompey and he was really good. He had quite a lot of talent. And one time, I went to watch one of his games, and I wore a Saints hat, a woolly scarf with a Saints badge on the front. Gav comes running over, really angry. Oh well, you know, he didn't want to get stick. If the other players knew he was a Saints fan.
Is the dream over?
Dream over? No, dream's just begun. Definitely. Yeah, trust me, the dream's just begun.
Cardiff, after all those years before, were full of mixed up fortunes, heartache and hard times. You put it past you, battled to St. Mary's call, and more than mass the others in the rainy Cardiff skies. Bit unlucky, you could have won the tie, moved on to the new season, prepared yourself again. And when that whistle blew, you charged across the halfway line and took it week by week with the leather red white man. What's it gonna be? This won't last eternity, soon we'll find the glory days again. Help us find the glory days again. Then we'll find the glory days again. Help us find the glory days again. Soon we'll find the glory days again.
And to all fellow Saints fans who finally received this free disc, we really hope you've enjoyed this DVD. We've tried to show that the special friendly spirit exists at Southampton Football Club like no other. We've spoken to lots of people and made lots of new friends, and we thank all those who've chatted with us and shared their memories and thoughts. And we're just a little proud of our own efforts too, the interviewers, the camera and sound people, the editors, the soundtrack artists, the volunteer DVD copiers, in fact everyone who were and who will be involved in some small way or another. Very many thanks. On a personal note, in following the Saints, I'm following a dream, one where Southampton Football Club brings people closer together. It's just one of the reasons why this DVD came to be made. Football seasons seem long and our expectations may be high. When those hopes are gone, they don't disappear forever. There's always the next season for us fans to dream again. Here's to those seasons and those dreams.